We're really excited to talk to you today about truly what our vision is, ending the questionnaires. If you're a vendor who provides services to healthcare entities, you probably don't like getting your 300, 400 control questionnaire, and we're going to talk today about a vision and also a product that's actually in place now that we believe can replace that. Let's do some introductions. Matthew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Britton. So Matthew Webb, Chief Product Security Officer at HCA. I was a technologist years ago. Recently, in the past 2 years, we've been on a very aggressive approach to identifying and inventorying our third parties within our environment. And this last year has been more about intake. So we've on this approach of understanding third-party risk management, how we go about assessing that risk in relationship to the demand that we were able to capture with our intake process.
And hey everyone, I'm Britton Burton. I'm the Senior Director of Product Strategy at Coral Technologies. Anytime I introduce myself though, I always want to say my background, what I really am is a security and risk leader. That's what I've been my whole career. Actually spent the last 10 years at HCA Healthcare building risk and security programs, doing third-party risk. And now I got an opportunity to try to build a product that actually solves this horrible problem for an entire industry, and I believe that we can.
All right, so just kind of level set with the room. Anybody here that's part of a health system HDO? Raise your hand. Not many. All right. Supplier, are you responding to these sort of questionnaires? Awesome. All right, keep your hands up. Do you like responding to the questionnaires? No, all right, trick question. We got it out of the way. So let's be honest, right? This is, we started here with part of Health 3PT as well with this collaborate session, and we really like to keep this collaborative. So do please continue to offer the honest and sincere feedback on this one. Some of the challenge that we've got, right? There's a greater reliance on suppliers. We hear it from our executives, right? Healthcare over the past 3 years, its adoption of technology looks like a hockey stick. We're relying on our third parties more and more. That's not going to slow down. At least as I listen to our executives, we are going to continue that trajectory. So, which means we've got more exposure that we've got to address. Board level awareness, right? This is not just the security engineers wanting to have conversations around vulnerabilities and third parties. This is elevated to our board level. I was on our last earnings call. Third-party risk management was mentioned by our executives there. They need something different than just how many suppliers and the vulnerabilities they present, right? We've got to give a more business approach to third-party risk management. Suppliers, you guys, are you inundated with requests? Yes, you are, right? So this is an opportunity to figure out how we narrow that down. Because you can't scale, we can't scale either, right? I love Excel, but I don't want to do Excel every day. It's just not possible. Our stakeholders are frustrated. Our stakeholders, not mine, not just yours. You're working with our business, I'm working with our business. They are frustrated with this process. We've got hardware, modalities sitting on a dock of a hospital. Can't be plugged in for the physician to use it to support the patients. Why? Because we're still waiting on the spreadsheet to be completed and sent to security to review to approve it to go to live, right? Has anybody had that experience? Absolutely. All right. So continual assessments. This is kind of, let's talk about it. Anybody in here doing continuous monitoring? Really, are you? Okay, good. We've tried. I can't tell you that it's very continuous at this point in time, not at the scale that we see it, right? So this does tend to be kind of those grainy Bigfoot videos at times, in my opinion. So we've got to figure out a way of what does continuous monitoring look like. So I'd love to have a conversation with you afterwards as well. All right, cybersecurity certification adoption. Right, we're looking to lean more heavily into where suppliers have invested their time, their effort into high trust. How do we take more advantage of that, take advantage of it as a whole, right, to be able to help complete those requests, right? It's not, look, you're answering those requests for high trust. You're answering the same questions in the Excel spreadsheets. Let's figure out how we get those married together.
So these are just some numbers that demonstrate the problem. A recent article in all the publications that we all read mentioned that the average hospital has 1,300 or more vendor relationships that they work with. Now that's hospital. The HCAs of the world, the large health systems of the world, the payers of the world, It's way more than that, and we all know that, right? So large ecosystem you're dealing with. Scale is a problem. To that end, to the digital adoption that's increasing, nearly 70% of healthcare IT organizations say they've experienced a breach tied to a supplier's access. And of course, the number that goes up every year, 50 million Americans in 2022 impacted by a health data breach, that number seems to rise by about 10 million every single year. As an industry, another article quoted $237 billion each year spent on third-party risk management. Now, 5 years ago, I'm not even sure if we knew enough in the healthcare industry to know that we should be doing something to address the problem from a financial spend standpoint. So on the one hand, at least we're aware there's a problem and we're spending for it. We're including that in our cybersecurity budgets. But despite that investment, those last two statistics really at the end kind of tell the story, right? The table stakes stuff. Can you prioritize risk in your third-party environment? Can you even create a comprehensive or close to comprehensive inventory of your vendors? If we can't do those and we're spending that amount of money, something with TPRM is broken. And really our stance is that it just everything in TPRM, everything in vendor assessment and vendor risk management, third-party risk management comes down to scale. It's all a scale issue. And it's a pretty simple math equation. If you take the 1,300 or so vendors that you in theory may need to assess annually, the average questionnaire these days in the Excel spreadsheet or in the system that maybe is a portal but still just sends out questionnaires, 200 questions, I think that's probably undershooting it. I was talking to someone at dinner last night that said they received an 800 question questionnaire from a telecom provider. So you think, 3 minutes or so per question when you talk about the security engineer on the supplier side responding, the security analyst on the buyer side, reviewing the response, the inevitable, what do you mean by this question? You attached the wrong thing. This response doesn't make sense. And you can see the amount of time that we're talking there. So scale is the ultimate problem in third-party risk, and the current way of either certainly spreadsheets, but even a lot of the tools that just make it somewhat easier to answer questions, that's not really the future, and we've got to do something better.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this new approach, Britton. Go ahead. So really it starts on the right-hand side of this slide, not the left. It's shifting that responsibility. So we're looking for our suppliers to demonstrate their mature security program, right? What artifacts do you have? What certifications do you have that give us assurance that you've developed a strong, mature security program or continuing to develop? How's that? Because you're not just done. This isn't a destination, it's a journey when it comes to security. Setting expectations up front, right? We see this with our stakeholders, right? Hey, we've got a contract done, we're waiting for this assessment to be complete. How long is this going to take? Depends on the supplier, right? Let's get ahead of that problem, right? This should not be an inhibitor to contracting. Creating a win-win environment. I think this is key for kind of our approach. We're looking for collaboration with our team. We're looking for our suppliers to come to us and help us understand what you all do to secure your organization. What have you done, right? Are you DoD certified? What can we take advantage of your DoD certification to demonstrate that maturity? Help us understand the challenges you've got. If you're a new startup, all right, there's pathways for that. If you're a mature organization that's on a lot of acquisition spree, there's a pathway for that too. Right, this isn't just from the HDO side. We're looking for that collaboration because it goes back to the very beginning of this. This is a journey with our suppliers. Our partnerships don't just stop, right? This isn't our last conversation that I intend to have in our group. Right, this is ongoing, so we need to create that win-win environment up front. Keeping that conversation going. Anytime if you're dealing with contracts, negotiations, what happens when the conversation ends? It's where the business dies, right? Same here. Let's keep those conversations going. Let's learn. Because as we know in technology, it hasn't stopped, right? You guys are probably sitting through some of the AI conversations here today and yesterday, right? We're going to continue to evolve technology. We've got to understand this at a better level. All right, and then leverage combined positions, right? We believe that there's a saturation point that as we adopt this, other groups adopt it. It starts gaining a lot of momentum. Therefore, it shifts the market, and we've done this at scale. Back to Britton's point, this is a scalability challenge.
Yeah, and just one extra point on that last thing, because we had some great conversations with the group that showed up for the Health Third Party Trust meeting yesterday. We're going to talk more about that group at the end of this presentation. And the combined market positions, this ability to reach a point where enough of the supplier community actually believes that the healthcare buyer is going to say, hey, you're high trust certified, we're pretty much done here. Or that you'll pursue and keep the high trust certifications. And then the more that the buyer side says, this is ridiculous, why are we asking hundreds of questions? Let's accept the fact that we've got high trust certifications, that we've got some other assurances that we'll talk about in this model, and let's move on. That is a key theme that we've got to come together, collaborate, and agree together that there's a better way to do it. And so our approach on a better way to do that is called Coral Cleared. I want to state now, if any of you have received questionnaires from Coral Technologies, you may be thinking, what's this guy up here from Coral talking about ending the questionnaire? I just answered a questionnaire this morning. I missed one of the sessions. Well, I'm sorry, but I will say, like, transparently, we started as a company 12 years ago when no one really knew how to get their arms around this third-party risk problem yet. And so the way everyone kind of did it was, well, we need to ask a bunch of control questions. And Coral figured out a way to operationalize that, give you managed service that makes the healthcare system not have to do it internally. But we also were acquiescing to our clients' demands of, I want to ask this customized question or these 100 customized questions. Okay, you're our client, we'll do whatever you want. And over the course of time, we realized this is not sustainable. Even if you're outsourcing it to a company like Coral that hires resources who all they do is third-party risk and auditing of evidence and so on. And so we have, for several years before I came to the organization, thought there's a different way to do this. But it's only within the past year with partners like Matthew, with some of the others that are here from the Health Third-Party Trust approach, who have had the courage really to say, we got to do something different. Let's try a simpler approach, that we actually have been able to build a platform and a methodology that allows this. So talk to me if you're frustrated with Coral the old way, but help us figure out how to get everyone on board with buyers accept assurances, suppliers obtain assurances, and kill the questionnaire. So what does it look like? How do we actually do it? Well, first of all, stop asking 350 control questions. Really, and fundamentally what that comes down to is there are assurances like a high trust certification that you as the security team at your supplier shop spend hundreds of hours meeting the obligations for, and hundreds of hours from an independent assessor that's assessing your organization, validating controls to ensure that security posture is in place. From a true risk management standpoint, we would all benefit from incentivizing our supplier community to these assurances rather than to answering more questionnaires. And we have to agree to that principle. And I think everyone here already knows, but Matthew mentioned this continuous monitoring or continuous visibility problem. The other thing with the questionnaire that we get right now, as soon as we get it from you, the answer is out of date and somewhat useless. Your technology environment changes, and the only way to adapt to that change is the fact that you are continuing to, for instance, stay certified, continuing to perform pen testing on your environment, continuing to operate your controls and share certain information that demonstrates that. So, this is what we're talking about. Down to brass tacks. You've talked about a small set of key security requirements instead of controls. This is what we're talking about. I'll briefly go through this. I'm not going to touch on every single one. If you have any specific questions about, hey, what does that one box mean? Yeah, we'd love to talk to you afterwards. But basically, what we're talking about is you see on the left the row headers, organization level, and product and service level. So there are things, I'm sure there are multi-product organizations represented in here. Some of you may only have the one product or service, that's fine. If you are multi-product, there are things you're doing at the sort of enterprise organization level, like having a dedicated security leader, like obtaining cyber liability insurance, that you really only need to demonstrate once, right? And you shouldn't have to re-demonstrate that or re-answer that question for every product you sell. But then there are, if you happen to be, I don't know, someone who sells a medical device and a SaaS application that pulls data from it for some sort of analytic service, pen testing those two things is a different thing. Those are different products, and so there are product level requirements too. Dependent on scope simply means, depending on what that is, that certification may move up to the org level or down to the product level. in some way, shape, or form. Simple example, if you're selling a SaaS platform, we would hope that certification you obtain is scoped to that environment where that SaaS platform is hosted. Whereas if you're selling an on-prem asset where maybe the only risk exposure to the customer is some sort of remote support that you provide, certification at the organization level, your organizational hygiene controls is probably more relevant than product level. Moving on, you see the column headers. So security hygiene, that's the leftmost column. That's kind of the most one-for-one replacement for the traditional control questionnaire right now. If you can provide artifacts that show those things, we really don't need to ask control level questions, right? Security operations rigor and resilience is the middle column. This is a slightly different angle. There's not as much in that column that would maybe necessarily have a buyer question whether or not they're willing to contract with you. Those are more about the inevitability of security incidents. Just because you are certified, just because you have obtained assurances and you perform routine pen testing, doesn't mean that you will never experience an incident. It's a fact of life, we all know that. What your buyers want to know, what we hear from them all the time as our clients, is that they have the capability to respond, to remain resilient, that they're testing their ability to do so. And then an even more future-facing use case down at the bottom there with fourth party and offshore, can you disclose information to us on a routine basis that gives us that sort of spider web visibility into the fourth parties, to me as the buyer, your third parties that you rely on, that maybe are in a different country or have some sort of event that I have no way to know actually affects me unless I have the data surfaced to me through some way. So that information is relevant 6 months after we've signed the contract and we're operating together, and I just need to see, oh, that new supply chain vulnerability, actually I am affected by that. And the only way I can get that is continually sharing information and building data stories off of it. And then the final one, security implementation, that's kind of the last leg of the journey that gets forgotten a lot of the time. The buyer side, when they acquire your platform, your devices, they need the security white paper, the configuration guide that tells them, here are the optimal security settings that you need to configure at time of implementation. Here's how you turn on MFA. Here's how you enable audit logging. That's something that gets forgotten a lot. It needs to be passed along to usually the IT ops implementations teams to make sure they actually implement in the most sound security settings possible. So a couple of themes to all this. This is artifact-based. This is not yes-no attestation. Anywhere we can embrace third-party independent assurance, we want to do that, right? And hopefully you see a lot of that here. It's also about continuous testing of your environment, testing of your controls, testing of your code, testing of your people, testing of your processes. These are the themes that led to this. We did not build this in a vacuum. We were advised by some of our larger clients and vendors on, this is a reasonable bar. If you get this from a vendor, I'm not going to need to send the questionnaire. And in fact, as a part of signing on to accepting Coral Cleared, with our clients, that in the contract they say if they're meeting a certain threshold of these requirements, I will not send the control-based questionnaire. And that is a really important part because I know you still believe that you're not going to get the questionnaire even if you share your high trust cert. But if they're contractually obligated to it, that kind of changes the story. All right, and then on top of the framework that you saw there, and again, I can get into tons of detail on the requirements, why we chose them, what kinds of artifacts we're talking about there, if you want to talk offline. But just a couple of other things to talk through here on how we begin to automate this instead of sending you questionnaires. High Trust RDS, I'm sure there's been some sessions on it. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but essentially this is the ability to share information from the High Trust certification without the need to send the PDF. So we know no one wants to send the PDF. No one wants those files lying around. There's certain disclosure and privacy things that you're concerned with having that out there. But RDS makes it instantaneous, right? We can pull your results into a platform. All you have to do is give permission, and that's the beginning of automating a lot about third-party risk instead of asking you questions. And in addition to, we can get those results the first time, Just like we talked about, your environment changes, your technology changes as you recertify, as you close out gaps and caps. Like, these are updates that continuously happen. You have to come tell Coral or your customers, hey, we've got an update here. You want a system that does that for you, and your customers can be alerted that you're moving in the right direction, or if there's a problem, to transparently say, hey, we missed a date. That's okay. We're partners in this. Let's see what the resolution is. But if you can do that through a system instead of through exchanging documents, that's where we want to get.
So as we mentioned earlier, this really gets back to helping us communicate third-party risk to our holders, our senior executives up through the board, right? So what Britton's talked about with Coral Cleared gives us this opportunity to really evaluate our suppliers at a much higher level, right? It's a collaboration scorecard. Do you possess strong security, mature security program? Are you willing to work with us to align to some of these standards? Give us that continuous monitoring so that we've got visibility into your program, because this is sustaining, right? So, and this is how we represent this approach back. This is not about vulnerabilities. It's not about the technologies. It is about how we're collaborating, because we believe if the way you collaborate with security is how you collaborate with the rest of our business as well. So, are you providing those services? Are you performing for those services that you're providing? It also has a relationship back to security in our experience as well.
And so the key theme here, hopefully, is coming across is collaboration. The buyer side has to give a little bit on, we don't need to send our control questionnaire. We don't need the 300 question answered in the way that we've done it before. Obviously, we're asking the supplier side. You're at a high trust conference. I would assume a lot of you are very interested in pursuing high trust, and want to gain the value, realize the value of the work you put into that. If we can meet in the middle and say, yeah, there's a reasonable bar here that we can all meet and share information about, then we should do that. And I think fundamentally, like the key message that I want to get across anytime I talk about this is that we believe that the healthcare organizations and their business relationship and even their TPRM processes with each other, they do not exist simply. It's not a transactional relationship that simply exists to close out assessments. And I think we get lost in that sometimes. I know I'm guilty back when I had more TPRM responsibilities on the healthcare system side of getting lost in that, because I was overwhelmed by the number of vendor assessment requests I had to get through. We believe that it's a business relationship, right? You have to learn how to operate together, how to collaborate together in an ongoing relationship. And frankly, we have to get the assessment out of the way of that dynamic. And the only way to do that is through sharing technology, automation, key evidence, right? And fundamentally, that's where our mindset is with everything we develop about this solution. A lot of the history of TPRM has made it an adversarial relationship. Again, guilty as charged when I was the one on the phone or on the other end of sending my questionnaire to suppliers and vendors and berating them about the answers that I needed. I've been just as guilty of that as anyone. But that's not the point. It should be a collaborative relationship. And too many of the tools that have existed, and the innovation that has existed in this space has been usually one-sided. It's been make it easier for the security lead at the hospital system to send out more questionnaires, but much more difficult for the vendor to respond to those questionnaires. Or it's been a way to create a repository that vendors can documentation into, but then on the buyer side, those security teams have a really difficult time kind of parsing through those documents and that information to understand how to contextualize it against the contract they're actually pursuing with you. Like, is this thing relevant to what I'm buying? I don't really know. What we need is a clearinghouse that actually does the two-way evidence share, the two-way handshake on what something is, validates scope, and actually solves problems for both sides. And everything we do with this platform, with the evolution that Coral is going through, is to create that easier glide path for both sides to actually become business partners with each other. And Matthew's going to talk, the last few slides here are about health third-party trust, and we'll talk about a group that is actually coalescing around this concept of collaboration, and there's a better way in the middle, meeting in the middle to do this. So Matthew, will you tell us a little about H3PT?
Yeah, happy to. So founding member of Health Third Party Trust, we had our council meeting yesterday. Great content, Really looking forward to getting this out to a broader audience as well, just because I think this is fundamental to make this shift, right? I believe we all have these questions. We've all had these sort of challenges. I know Britton and myself with the Coral team. How do we help solve this, right? We know we're a big name, but we're still in a very large industry. So we've got some push behind this, we've got some momentum, but we need other like-minded individuals, and that's what, for me, H3PT has offered. If you're in the same boat, right, if you're tired of the spreadsheets, if you're not seeing a lot of value in that, if you would much rather take the effort that you're having to respond to all these questionnaire spreadsheets and roll that back into actually building more security in your products and services, I would encourage you to come and listen to some of the conversations going on in this group. It's like-minded individuals, it's payers, providers, HDOs, suppliers. We're all trying to come together to help solve this challenge, find that right path. Again, we know that this is not a destination, it's a journey. So we believe that this will continue to evolve, right? How do we handle these emerging technologies and topics like generative AI? Right, that's that group to say, all right, what are you doing on a supplier side? How are you building security into it? How do we take advantage of that and demonstrate that without yet having to add another tab to the spreadsheet to ask questions related to your AI models, okay? So if you don't see your name on this lineup and you would like to, come see me, come see would love to have a conversation with you to get you more engaged, more involved in this group, because I do truly believe that it's going to take the momentum. And believe it or not, we've seen a lot of growth in this space. So we held our supplier conference, our vendor conference this week. Previously this summer, we had close to, I think, around 100 members at that point in time, and seen this jump to nearly 200 over the last several months. So this is legitimately gaining momentum in this space.
Yeah, and one other point there, I think the numbers that I saw for this 180 plus, or it might be about 200 now, it was 95 payers and providers and 92 service providers, 92 vendors. So it is very intentionally not the health systems of the world coming together and saying, this is what our vendors will do. It is, we are very intentionally trying to engage both sides and say, we know it's painful for both. What are solutions that actually matter and make a difference for both towards that ongoing collaborative business relationship? And to that end, you may have heard some about the 6 recommended practices from H3PT. We talked about them a lot yesterday in the H3PT Summit. I don't know if it's come up in some of the other presentations, but just to talk a little bit about our goal at Coral is to build a platform that operationalizes and automates these recommended practices. So starting on the top left, contract language. I know none of you who actually work on the supplier side want to hear about contract language, but the reality is contract language is a reality we all have to face, right? You're gonna face contract language. So if the buyer side community, the healthcare provider, the payers can agree, let's stop putting contract language that says you will implement these 200 controls because that's what's written into my company's control standard. And they say, we expect that you will be transparent, achieve assurance, and collaborate with us. And all that means is things like, go out and get a high trust. And when you have a cap, share that through a platform with us. That's transparency, that's collaboration. If the contract terms are based on that, instead of on hundreds of controls, it's still contract terms, so I know it's not fun, but maybe it's at least a little bit better way forward. Risk tiering strategy, I think this is becoming more of a known standard in healthcare and cybersecurity in general. A few years ago, it was not, right? But the concept is simple. Not every supplier, not every engagement with a supplier is created equal. There is different data types that make inherent risk greater or lower. There is business criticality, and there are ways to decrease the level of due diligence that you need to go through as a service provider who is in the lower risk tier, or certainly to decrease the frequency with which you get assessed or need to provide artifacts or need to timelines at which you need to remediate. Appropriate, reliable, and consistent assurances. I hope that's come through. Again, your trust conference, I'm assuming you're embracing the assurance model, and we sure do want to walk the walk there and say we have clients who are very willing to not send you the questionnaire If you can go out there and proactively get Coral cleared and say, I don't want to be assessed anymore. Let me be a part of the program. Let me surface those artifacts to you from that previous slide. And if I'm in your database as a cleared vendor and one of your clients comes to assess me, you say, hey, we're good. They're already cleared. Here's their result from the assessment we performed on the artifacts they gave us. And we keep it up to date. Corrective actions. That's another thing you probably don't want to hear a whole lot about in a presentation like this, but just like contract language, it's a reality, okay? What's different about this model is if you proactively say, I want to be Coral cleared, put me in the database, here's my stuff, giving you the level of control around your remediation pathway, around your remediation reality as a company, instead of the 200 buyers that are assessing you saying, well, we want you to get a pen test and I need it on my desk Friday by 5 o'clock, right? And then the next one saying next Friday by 5 o'clock. If you have a release cycle, for instance, on your pen testing cadence, maybe it's major releases, maybe it's every quarter, whatever it is, if you declare that within the platform, this is our cycle, here's our most recent result, our next major release is coming, September of 2023, that's when you can expect the result. Here you go, buyer, this is our remediation. You don't even have to ask. Like, you need to have some control over that. And I promise you, I know you may not believe it, but there are the Matthews of the world that will look at that and go, we're good. You've got a remediation plan. I don't have to put my obligations on you because you're meeting a reasonable requirement. That recurring updates, that's a key thing. If you decide you want to be Coral cleared, again, proactively getting Coral cleared and avoiding the questionnaires, then you have the ability to resupply evidence as appropriate. Your high trust cert is going to have an expiration date on it at some point. You know that you will need to resurface that, or your caps and your gaps will be closed at some point. Your pen test, for example, all those things I've already mentioned. You have the ability to kind of set the parameters on, I'm going to resupply this evidence according to the schedule that makes sense for our security program. So much of what we talk about is all of our resources on both sides spend all this time answering questionnaires or responding to questionnaires. Man, wouldn't it be great if we could redeploy very talented security professionals in an industry that's running short of security talent to actually improving your security program instead of playing, spreadsheet jockey. And then finally, metrics on organization-wide vendor risk. So a simpler approach like this allows benchmarking on the buyer side that's very different from dealing with hundreds and hundreds of controls and not being able to make sense of it. But also you as a vendor, if you're a vendor in this room, as a supplier in this room, your ability to see how you compare against your business sector. What do other suppliers in your industry do against Coral cleared, against these requirements? Is that an interesting lever for me to pull to be shown as a higher security tiered vendor in terms of assurances? And that might be useful for you, and there's certainly the ability. There has to be some anonymity to that. We're not just going to blast data about everyone all over the place, but there's some interesting comparative analysis with this simpler approach that just doesn't exist when we're talking about proprietary, unique, customized control questionnaires with hundreds and hundreds of questions.
All right, so what now? If you're evaluating your TPRM program, does anybody here think it's too long to assess suppliers, right? Are you a supplier and it's taking too long to assess you, right? This might be an opportunity, right? Are you able to meet the demands of your business? Are you able to meet the demands of your purchasers? Okay. Are you overwhelmed with the scale of the problem? I know I am, right? This last year has given me visibility into what we've got coming at us, and I can tell you we can't do it looking at spreadsheets on a day-to-day basis. It's impossible, not just impractical. Point of your company's vendor relationship. We've mentioned it, right? It's about more than just these spreadsheets. It's about partnerships. It's about engaging. How do we come together to solve healthcare challenges? I know there's other industries, but we're truly focused in the healthcare, right? We're trying to provide better services to these patients. We're all patients at some point in time. How do we come together to provide that service, not just at the delivery, but through security as well, because it is all interconnected. We keep talking about TPRM is broken. I believe this model is helping unbreak that. Again, if you're like-minded, if you want to know more, certainly come talk to us. Let's get you engaged in Health 3PT, let you hear some of that messaging, find some other support behind this so that we can gain that momentum to fix the broken TPRM.
Yeah, and just to close, we'll have time for questions. I think we got a few minutes left, but just to close out, our call to action, of course, if you want to talk to us about Coral, about what HCA is doing with this, we would love to talk to you. But visit health3pt.org, because that is truly the sort of independent movement, all of us together saying there's got to be a better way. There are elements of that we can all get behind. Those 6 recommended practices, if those resonated with you, if you want to, you'll network with others who are like-minded, join us. We're really doing some good things. It's early on, it's grassroots right now, but there's real power behind the people that are coming together, the brands that are coming together to do this. So please do join. Okay, so I think we've got a few minutes left. Would be happy to answer any questions if there are.
Okay. So thank you for the microphone. I know I talk loud. Microphones help. Okay, so I love the concept of this. I think we've been talking about this as industry for a really long time. Assess once, apply many times, right? That's the whole theme of this conference in many ways. So I lost count how many times you said collaboration and partnership. I think I lost count over 30. Loved it. So I'm going to put you a little bit in the hot seat here because you said it so many times. All right. There are other vendors in this space doing similar things, both in the same vertical and other verticals. There are vendors in other countries, the UK, for example, who are really big in this space. Assess once, apply many times. So in the spirit of transparency and partnership and collaboration, how are you as a team looking at partnering with those other vendors, those other third-party risk management suppliers, so the true assess once, apply many has reciprocity from their vendor platforms to yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's obviously a slightly different answer for us in that space because those are competitors of ours, right? Just like you have competitors in your space. But I think there is an underlying theme of like, hey, there's a reasonable approach here. And of course, we want to be the solution for everyone, right? But I think there is a way to collaborate with others in our space on this model, and it comes down to data sharing, excuse me, my voice cracked, in my opinion. And now that is not our primary focus right now. We're early on in this. We're trying to get people to believe the vision and to believe that it's possible, and to believe that, hey, if I have that assurance, maybe I won't get the questionnaire. But we absolutely, in our long-term vision of this, believe this isn't just a Coral play. There is a way forward where other providers of this kind of service can absolutely be a part of the ecosystem of a community, of a marketplace that for example, if you need a pen test provider, there are pen test providers out there that we would love to have in an ecosystem of trusted providers to share evidence to us, right? There are examples like that we absolutely have on the roadmap and on the partnership approach, partnership strategy. It is not our primary focus right now, but we do believe there's a way to do that.
So going to the Health 3PT organization, I'd like to understand a little bit more about what the current commitment is that those organizations have made to this mission or to this initiative, because there have been kind of third-party risk management alliances going on for a number of years. And, I can say with confidence, although I won't name and shame at the moment, that some of the people who have been part of, some of the organizations who've been part of those initiatives are still sending us questionnaires. So what is the commitment today, and what does that roadmap look like?
You want that one, or you may take it? Yep, be happy to. So first of all, the commitment is show up and be present and provide some feedback, right? These recommended best practices, this guidance, that's from the council, right? That is part of being part of this, right? It's back to reciprocating, right? That's it. We know friends, we've got friends, we know people, right? So if folks have got high certification, we've got that opportunity to help leverage those relationships to lean in and use that as an opportunity, right? So again, grassroots, right? But by being part of the solution, right? This isn't just show up, get, and we've got a bug on our website or what have you. It's committing to following. We've also will be extending in a new committee, if you would, that will include the suppliers, right? So this is just suppliers being able to have their voice in all of this. So it's not just the HDOs, as Brenton was talking about, right? We're not coming down with a heavy hammer. We need that feedback, right? And this gets back to that reciprocity of help us understand your position, right? I don't think that we see the full picture from the HDO side. That's that opportunity in that council to be able to share that so that we can expand this. Is it updating contract language? Is it leaning into these certifications? Is it getting part of these other groups that have talked about this for years? Let's get those together.
So my question is, if there is a third party there trying to connect with our organization, we being the healthcare, but they are, let's say, payroll service providers doing the payrolls, can they become a part of Health 3PD? Or, I mean...
So a service provider coming in.
Right.
Absolutely, right? I mean, because they're still, to be honest, right, this isn't just about applications or technologies in risk assessments. It is service providers, right? There's risk of having that data shared, right? It's risk of having folks come on site. That's been enlightening for me in my role of not just focusing on a very narrow band of our partners, right? We're talking about folks that come on premise to do landscaping, all the way to this new AI component and everything in between. So service providers absolutely fall into this model for me.
Yeah, I was just wondering with the collaboration of getting it sounds like the checklists, getting them, I'm one of those people that uses the checklist, but a lot of what's in that checklist is what's the risk and impact to my network or my environment. So signing off on saying, oh, I'm high trust certified, still doesn't give me the comfort knowing that there could be a potential impact with that particular product coming into my environment. Is there also oversight into that? Like maybe the product needs a USB drive and you've got a policy that's banning USB drives, for example. Anything of that nature?
So a lot of that gets into the implementation details, right? And one of the artifacts that we mentioned, actually a couple, have some of that detail. MDS squared may contain, but those security white papers, we're seeing that to become a very common attribute, artifact from our suppliers that talk about the life cycle of the operating system, who's responsible from a shared responsibility model, what sort of ports need to be opened up to allow this device to connect out. So this truly is, how do we get ahead of this procurement challenge, build that relationship so that we've got more collaboration with the suppliers on what the details are to how we deploy that. If you've been in one hospital, you've been in exactly one hospital when it comes to security and technology controls. So every implementation becomes very different. It's very challenging to have just one implementation model through this. So this is a first phase that gets us down further through that process.
That's a great question. And another reason that there is more than just, do you have a certification, back to that grid slide with the 18, 19, 20 requirements, is that exact reason. Like for example, DR plan was one of the requirements. Well, if you have a high trust cert, DR2, we can look at that and see that you have a DR plan. But there are certain elements that are operationally important to each buyer that we, even Coral can't, we can't represent all of those interests. And so if there's enough of an artifact shared there for you to see, for example, what is the URL where you list updates about your disaster, your event response that I need to be able to go to and understand. There's like operational details like that are a huge reason for the other 18 requirements that were up there, that we're trying to account for that uniqueness in your environment. And then I'll also mention, we have some of our early adopter vendors who are getting proactively cleared have actually said, surprisingly to me, have said, I actually want to have the ability for each of the customers, even if they're accepting this whole Coral cleared thing and they're not going to send me a questionnaire, to be able to have a call with me, to ask me questions that are going to be unique to them. Because not only will I help them be more successful, but I'm going to learn things about their expectations or maybe certain controls that we have scoped out from our assurances that are really important to them. And I can learn that and take that to my next certification round. So, there are ways to account for that. There's sort of operational nuances that will always be there. And it's how do we focus only on that instead of all the stuff, all the 300 control questions is kind of at the heart of what we're after here. Maybe time for one more. I know we're right at the time limit, but any others? Or Critty, are you telling me end it? Okay, so we'll end it. Matthew and I will hang out up here if any of you would like to chat, and I'll be around tomorrow as well if you want to connect.
Thank you all.